Hello and welcome to Indus News live from Islamabad. I'm Jawad Tehami and these are the headlines. Indian forces have martyred 4 more civilians in occupied Jammu and Kashmir. The troops conducted cordon and search operations in Pulwama and Kulgam districts. This comes as Kashmiris observe the 5th martyrdom anniversary of freedom fighter Burhan Wani. Russia, Iran and Turkey have condemned Israel's military incursions into Syria, calling them a violation of sovereignty. The trio issued a joint statement after the 16th round of the Astana talks in Kazakhstan's capital, Nur-Sultan. The guarantor nations vowed to continue to cooperate in Syria to defeat ISIS and other militant groups. Afghan forces have retaken control of a western provincial capital stormed by the Taliban a day earlier. In a statement, the Defense Ministry said hundreds of fresh troops have been redeployed to the region. It said some fighting continued on the fringes of Kalaino, capital of Badghis province. Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan has warned of a looming 4th wave of coronavirus in the country. In a video message, Khan said the Delta variant, first identified in India, is the biggest concern as Pakistan witnesses a sudden rise in daily cases. Meanwhile, organizers of the Tokyo Olympics have agreed to hold the event without spectators under a COVID-19 state of emergency. Globally, there are now more than 4 million deaths and over 185 million infections. Those were the headlines and detailed stories right after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back, and now for the news in detail. Indian forces have martyred 4 more civilians in occupied Jammu and Kashmir. The civilians were targeted during a military operation in Pulwama and Kulgam districts. The authorities have also suspended internet services in these areas. Rights groups say the Indian occupying forces have killed at least 384 Kashmiris since August 2019. Pakistan has paid tribute to the Kashmiri freedom fighter Burhan Wani on his 5th martyrdom anniversary. Indian forces martyred Wani in a fake encounter in Kokanag area of Islamabad district in 2016.
In a tweet, Pakistan's Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi said India should know that it cannot quell the Kashmiris' independence movement through its occupying forces and state-sponsored terrorism. He said Indian atrocities lead to the birth of more brave Kashmiri fighters like Wani. Meanwhile, Pakistani political and Hurriyat leaders gathered in Islamabad to pay tribute to Wani. During the seminar, the leaders reiterated their commitment to the people of Kashmir in their fight for freedom. Governor of all parties Hurriyat Conference, Sayyid Faiz Naqshbandi, said Burhan Wani will remain an important part of the liberation struggle for Kashmiris.
Shaheed Burhan Wani was an important commander of the freedom movement. Actually, he was struggling for the right to self-determination of the Kashmiri people, which is denied by the government of India for last more than 70 years. We seek the attention of the international community for giving us this right to self-determination so that this region could also be seen in peacefully.
Governor of all parties Hurriyat Conference, Sayyid Faiz Naqshbandi, said Burhan Wani will remain an important part of the liberation struggle of Kashmiris.
For more on this, we are joined by Manahil Ahmed, our correspondent in Islamabad. Manahil, please update us about the event being held to observe the 5th martyrdom anniversary of Kashmiri freedom fighter Burhan Wani.
Yes, Pakistan political leaders and Kashmiri Hurriyat leaders have gathered in Islamabad to remember Burhan Wani on his 4th anniversary of martyrdom. They're here to highlight the atrocities committed by Indian forces in occupied Valley, which include custodial killings, torture, rape, disappearances, and the use of pellet guns, and many more. They're here to reaffirm their commitment to the Kashmiris for the fight and for their struggle of freedom, and they're also calling on the global community to fulfill their promise and to grant the people of Kashmir the right to self-determination, which is long overdue now.
Manahil Ahmed, thank you for the updates. And now moving on, Afghan forces have retaken control of a western provincial capital stormed by the Taliban a day earlier. In a statement, the Defense Ministry said hundreds of fresh troops have been redeployed to the region. It says some fighting continued on the fringes of Kalainao, the capital of Badghis province. Kabul said 69 fighters have been killed in the fresh operations on the edge of the capital. Yesterday, the Taliban seized key government buildings in the city amid foreign withdrawal. Meanwhile, the group also claims it has conquered the last key district of southern Zabul province. Earlier, the defense chiefs of Turkey and the US discussed the security of Kabul airport. Iran says delegations from the Taliban and the Afghan government have agreed that a political settlement is the only way forward. This comes a day after Tehran hosted talks between the two sides as violence in Afghanistan has risen amid the withdrawal of the foreign troops. According to the joint statement, the delegations agreed on holding another meeting to devise a mechanism for reconciliation. Meanwhile, UK's Prime Minister Boris Johnson says most British troops have been pulled out of Afghanistan, with the rest to come home shortly. Earlier, Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said the pullout means the US has recognized its failure in the 20-year-long war. He also warned that Kabul's unwillingness to form an interim government with the Taliban will prolong the conflict. And for more on this, we are joined by Yusuf Azizi, a political analyst from Washington, D.C. Mr. Azizi, thank you for your time at Indus News. Can we hope the meeting between warring Afghan sides in Tehran will lead to a de-escalation of violence?
So I believe it could be very helpful to provide a peaceful talk between the different parties in Afghanistan. But on the other hand, I am really skeptical about the success of these kinds of meetings, whether it happens in Iraq, in Iran, Qatar, Turkey, or in other countries. Because, you know, the ideal situation is that Afghanistan's neighboring countries reach together, settle their interests in the region, compromise on the benefit they want from that region, on economic issues, security matters, and so on. So this could help the Afghanistani people to have a long-lasting peace. But unfortunately, there are several stakeholders here, the neighboring countries, the regional powers, even the world powers. Each of them have their own interests in the region, especially in Afghanistan. So it is not very helpful that one country itself, whether it is in Doha, Qatar, in Istanbul, Turkey, in Tehran, they reach to the other sides in Afghanistanis people and society. It needs some kind of, you know, mutual agreement, mutual discussion between the countries in the region, the neighboring countries, especially the Pakistani, Chinese, Iranians, and the Central Asian countries to reach to Afghanistani people and Afghanistani government and these groups outside the Afghanistan officials to reach a better solution.
Mr. Azizi, Iranian Foreign Minister Javad Zarif has said Tehran is ready to help in the process of a dialogue between different Afghan factions. How do you see this one, and is there any explanation to it?
So, as you know, Iran and Afghanistan share deep cultural and historical ties. And, you know, they have about 1,000-kilometer border, the same border within two countries. So Iran also hosts several million Afghanistan refugees and migrant workers. And Iranians are very are deeply concerned about the security in their neighboring countries, especially Afghanistan. This is the same for Pakistan. This is the same for other neighboring countries of Afghanistan. After we saw that the United States social engineering conducted after invading Afghanistan in 2001 has failed for the past 2 decades, and they are withdrawing from Afghanistan. So there are a gap and a vacuum of power in Afghanistan. And it's completely affected the Iranian security, Iranian economic benefits, and Iranian issues in the region. So my understanding is that Iranian government wanna be a majoring power like other countries to talk to these different factions of Afghanistani, and not just getting one side of these people, whether it is Afghanistan, the officials in Afghanistan government or the radical Islamist group. So they wanted to show that these cultural background, these language, same languages as Farsi or kind of the same cultural issues can help to facilitate the talk between the Afghanistan because what happened in Afghanistan is not about the last 2 decades or about the after the invading by Soviet Union in 1970s, 1980s. It is long-lasting, half century. It is from the creator of this, this country. It is not based on this one unique racial issues, ethnic issues. It is engineered by the British Empire to combat the Russian Empire at that time. So there is a need, as I said, there is a need to a mutual understanding about all countries, neighboring countries in the region. The Iranian cannot solve the problems or address the problems, just on their hand.
Mr. Yusuf Azizi, thank you very much for your time at Indus News. We really appreciate that. And now moving on, the US has acknowledged Pakistan's efforts to bring peace and security to Afghanistan. A State Department spokesperson said Washington and Islamabad also share broader counter-terrorism interests. In a press briefing, Ned Price said Pakistan is an important partner across many fronts. Price said the people-to-people contacts between Washington and Islamabad unite the two countries. He noted that regional consensus and support for an Afghan-led peace process is important. The spokesperson said Iran has played a constructive role in hosting the recent intra-Afghan meeting. 3 rockets have landed near the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad in a series of attacks on American assets in the region. The Iraqi army says nearby places in Baghdad's heavily fortified green zone were struck. Sirens blared from the embassy compound, while the anti-rocket system was also activated. This follows a day marked by rocket and drone attacks against bases hosting U.S. forces in Iraq and Syria. The U.S.-led coalition says 2 personnel were injured after 14 rockets targeted an Al-Assad air base in western Iraq. Reportedly, a far-right Iraqi militant group has claimed the responsibility for the attacks. The US says it expects the 7th round of talks with Iran over the 2015 nuclear deal to take place at the right time. In a briefing, State Department spokesperson Ned Price did not specify any date or time for the next round. Price said Washington looks forward to engage in the discussions. The talks adjourned on June the 20th as the participants returned to their capitals for consultations. Meanwhile, Foreign Ministry spokesperson Saeed Khatibzadeh says Iran's production of enriched uranium is peaceful. Russia, Iran and Turkey have condemned Israel's military incursions into Syria, calling it a violation of sovereignty. The trio issued a joint statement after the 16th round of the Astana talks in Kazakhstan's capital, Nur-Sultan. They called for the cessation of such attacks that endanger the stability and security in the region. The guarantor nations vowed to continue to cooperate in Syria to defeat ISIS and other militant groups. The 3 nations also called for the early holding of the next round of the Syrian Constitutional Committee meetings in Geneva. Meanwhile, one of the key issues was a mechanism of cross-border aid for Syria and the UN mandate expiring this month. UN Special Envoy for Syria, Gia Pedersen, as well as representatives from Jordan, Lebanon, and Iraq are present at the meeting as observers. Haitian security forces have killed 4 suspects in the assassination of President Jovenel Moïse at his home. In televised comments, Haiti's police chief said 2 other mercenaries have been detained. More in this report.
Yesterday, unidentified gunmen shot dead the president and seriously wounded his wife, Martine Moïse. The First Lady was flown to Florida for treatment, where she is in a stable but critical condition. Officers are still in combat with some remaining suspects in the nation's capital, Port-au-Prince. Police Chief Leon Charles said 3 policemen who were taken hostage have also been recovered. Haiti's ambassador to Washington, Bochet Edmond, said the gunmen were masquerading as U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration agents, a move that would likely have helped them gain entry to Moïse's guarded residence. Haiti's government has declared a 2-week state of emergency to help it hunt down the assassins, whom Edmond described as a group of foreign mercenaries and well-trained killers. Acting Prime Minister Claude Joseph said the gunmen spoke English and Spanish, while the majority in Haiti speak French or Haitian Creole. The brazen assassination drew condemnation from the UN Security Council, the US, and neighboring Latin American countries. The Dominican Republic has closed its border to neighboring Haiti, where political unrest, gang violence, and a growing humanitarian crisis have all plunged the nation deeper into chaos.
Jacob Zuma, the former president of South Africa, has handed himself over to the police. A police spokesperson confirmed in a statement that Zuma was in custody in compliance with last week's ruling. Zuma begins his 15 months in jail for contempt of court. He was admitted to the Ascot Correctional Center in his home province of KwaZulu-Natal. Zuma was sentenced after he failed to attend an inquiry into corruption during his presidential tenure. He has been accused of allowing 3 Indian-born businessmen to plunder state resources and influence government policy. But Zuma and the 3 brothers who fled to Dubai after the former president was ousted deny any wrongdoing. More stories to follow right after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Brazil has reported more than 1,600 COVID-19 deaths and over 54,000 cases in the past 24 hours. Globally, the virus has claimed more than 4 million lives and has infected over 185 million others. More in this report.
More than 4 million people around the world have died of the COVID-19. But just 3 countries, the United States, Brazil, and India, account for more than a third of all these deaths. Despite a decline in overall cases and deaths in the Americas, last week the region accounted for more than half of global coronavirus fatalities. The UN has warned that efforts for pandemic recovery are threatened because women are being excluded from critical decision-making roles. Meanwhile, in the US, New York City threw a ticker tape parade for essential health workers.
It means a lot because, a lot of times you work and you don't get any thanks, so just being recognized and getting the city to say thank you, it means a whole lot. But really, a lot of us did it not for the thanks, because we wanted to help our communities.
Britain has announced to provide genome sequencing support to Brazil, Ethiopia, Kenya, Nigeria, and Pakistan to help track new variants, while the number of cases in Germany has ticked up again after more than 2 months of steady decline. In Spain, the health minister has warned that young people can develop severe infections as Delta variant tears through unvaccinated groups.
We are seeing an important increase in the accumulated incidence, especially in 2 age groups, 12 to 19 years and 20 to 29 years. with situations linked to end-of-year trips to stay indoors without respecting the rules that we all have imposed on ourselves, which we also know are those that prevent the spread of the virus.
Over in Asia, as a second wave of infection sweeps through Indonesia, large plots are being cleared to make space for burying COVID-19 victims. Meanwhile, Australia's New South Wales state has reported its biggest daily rise in locally acquired cases this year.
Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan has warned of a looming fourth wave of coronavirus in the country. In a video message, Khan said the Delta variant, first identified in India, is the biggest concern as Pakistan witnesses a sudden rise in daily cases. He lauded his government for carrying out research and taking timely decisions to contain the virus from spreading. The Health Ministry has reported 24 deaths and nearly 1,700 new infections in the last 24 hours. It says more than 910,000 people have recovered from the virus so far. The ministry says there are over 34,000 active cases in the country, while nearly 2,000 are in critical condition. Pakistan is remembering a prominent philanthropist Abdus Sattar Eidi on his 5th death anniversary. Eidi was born on February 28, 1928 in Gujarat and passed away at the age of 88 in Karachi. Eidi established the world's largest volunteer ambulance network and homeless shelters across Pakistan. He won many awards including the Asian Nobel, the Lenin Peace Prize and Nishan-e-Imtiaz for his services. Eidi's foundation has provided relief in Bangladesh, Afghanistan, Iran, Lebanon, Sri Lanka, Croatia, Indonesia and the US. North Koreans are marking the 27th death anniversary of the country's founder, Kim Il-sung. State media reported citizens and military officers in Pyongyang attended a 2-day tribute. They laid flowers and bowed in front of Kim's statue on Mansu Hill in Pyongyang. North Koreans also paid respect in front of a mosaic portrait of Kim and his late son, Kim Jong-il. The nation's flag was lowered to half-mast atop Mansudae Assembly Hall. Kim led his country from its founding in 1948 through the Korean War until he died in 1994. He was succeeded by Kim Jong-il, who died in December 2011. The EU says it will never accept a two-state solution on ethnically split Cyprus. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen said the bloc is very firm and united on the issue. In a news conference, she said if any state speaks to any EU member, including Cyprus, they speak to Brussels. Cyprus was split in a Turkish invasion in 1974, triggered by a brief Greek-inspired coup into two parts. The government of the south is recognized internationally, but the north is only recognized by Turkey. United Nations-led efforts and talks have failed to unite the island, with the most recent held earlier this year. A fire caused by an explosion on a ship at Dubais Jabal Ali port has been brought under control. The Dubai media office called the blast a normal accident in a container holding flammable material. In a statement, the media office said there are no fatalities or injuries reported. It said the port authorities are taking necessary measures to ensure the normal movement of ships. Jabal Ali Port is Middle East's largest transshipment hub, which handled 13.5 million containers in 2020. Former US President Donald Trump has filed a lawsuit against tech giants Google, Twitter, and Facebook. Trump's social accounts were suspended in January over public safety concerns in the wake of the Capitol riots. Trump says he has been wrongfully censored by the companies. The class action lawsuit filed in federal court in Florida also targets the three companies' CEOs. In a news conference, the former president said the case will prove that censorship is unlawful. He added that it is unconstitutional and completely un-American. Earlier, Trump had also claimed that his election defeat was a result of widespread fraud. In the U.S. state of Florida, the death toll from a residential building collapse in Miami has risen to 60 after rescue workers pulled out 6 more bodies from the rubble. Addressing a news conference, Miami-Dade County Mayor Daniela Levine Cava said 80 people were still considered missing in the disaster. The emergency effort has officially transitioned from an attempt to find survivors to a recovery operation, with the hope of extracting anyone alive from the rubble now vanquished. Japanese officials have warned of possible flooding and landslides as floods hit a city in Hiroshima. Officials have urged residents in Mihara City to be cautious as the Tenjo River has overflowed. Authorities have issued the level 5 alert for more than 8,200 people in 2 districts. The Met Agency says warm and damp air from the south has been feeding the seasonal rain front. Floodwaters have also covered streets in Takahara City as parts of Japan record heavy rainfall. Earlier on Saturday, rainfall in the seaside resort of Atami killed 7 people. Rescuers are still searching for 27 missing people. In Spain, activists say nearly 2,100 migrants have died trying to reach the country by sea during the first 6 months of the year. This is 5 times higher than was registered during the same period of last year. The migrants are from 18 countries, mainly in West Africa. Interior Ministry figures show a total of 12,622 migrants arrived in Spain by sea this year. But a spokesperson said the ministry has no tally for how many migrants went missing or died in the attempted crossing. In the U.S., tropical storm Elsa is weakening as it passes over northern Florida. Heavy rains and strong winds triggered by the storm caused flooding in the streets of the Florida Straits. The U.S. National Hurricane Center says Elsa has now been downgraded from a Category 1 hurricane. Some coastal countries reported flooding and downed trees, but authorities did not declare any injuries or major structural damage. About 26,000 customers had lost their power across Florida. More than 5 million people die each year globally because of excessively hot or cold conditions. A 20-year study published in The Lancet has found heat-related deaths are on the rise. The study analyzed mortality and weather data in 43 countries between 2000 and 2019. It found that 9.4% of global deaths each year are attributable to heat or cold exposure. It is equivalent to 74 extra deaths per 100,000 people. The highest heat-related excess death rate was in Eastern Europe, while Sub-Saharan Africa had the highest mortality rate linked to cold temperatures. The study has called for better housing insulation and more solar-powered air conditioning. India's second highest waterfall has thinned significantly due to scarce rain. Environmentalists say this is a direct result of the rapid deforestation in the Western Ghats. More in this report. The Western Ghats are home to some of the largest waterfalls in the country, including the majestic Jog Falls. The dense tropical rainforests, also known as the Sahyadri mountain range, act as a substrate for the monsoon winds and also off-weather sea winds. The second highest plunge waterfall in the country, located on Shravati River, Jog Falls, is thinning in its quantity gradually over the years due to a lack of rain and delayed monsoons.
A massive amount of rich natural forests in the Western Ghats, which are called as rain-bearing forest cover, have come down drastically over a period of last 78 years, especially we can say since 1947, when we got the independence, when we became uniquely responsible for our own environment.
Over the years, the forest cover has been severely fragmented owing to human activities like clear felling of trees for agriculture and timber and mining.
But what has happened here is the rainfall itself has come down drastically in the Western Ghats. which is largely because of denudation of forests and also non-ecological activities such as building construction, mining, vast increase in human habitation, etc.
The Karnataka government recently introduced plans to increase tourist traffic in the area for Joke Falls by making it perennial and increased infrastructure for accommodating more tourists, drawing sharp criticism from environmental activists. 4 German tightrope walkers have set a world record by crossing a 2.1-kilometer long and 600 meters high line. The record that they have set in a U-shaped valley in Swedish Lapland may prove difficult to beat. More in this report.
Tightrope walking, also known as funambulism, is one of the most extreme of all air sports. In Bulletin Valley, the highliners wore watches with GPS trackers to measure and verify the distance walked between the 2 anchors. Heatrelated was the first to make it without falling and was followed by his compatriots Lucas Ermler, Ruben Langer and Friday Cohen.
This is hard because it's really exposed. It's 600 meters high. It's 2,150 meters. And it's really windy here sometimes. And just getting everyone here, it's really far out. To get it all organized, it's been a major challenge.
Bulletin is located just outside Abisko National Park inside the Arctic Circle and is a popular hiking destination. At this time of the year, the sun does not set, giving the highliners plenty of time to fry for the record. It took the team 2 days of hard work to rig the line, always mindful of the weather.
This place, Bulletin, is for me an iconic place and a very beautiful landmark of this whole area. And you know, when I started looking at bigger projects, I saw a picture of Bulletin. I haven't seen Bulletin in decades, and just when I saw it, I knew it had to be rigged and crossed.
Others on the team also tried to break the record and failed, but they just wanted to test to walk on the line. Even with a safety harness tethered to the rope, highlining can still be quite dangerous. It is a team sport, and a world record is shared among all the members, including the ones rigging the rope.
And now the business updates. The U.S. stocks have fallen on concern about the global economic comeback from COVID-19. The Dow Jones Industrial Average fell more than 1.25% at open. The S&P 500 also landed in the negative category, opening more than 1.25% lower. The tech-heavy Nasdaq Composite also fell close to 1.5% down at open. Meanwhile, oil prices dropped amid uncertainty over supply after the collapse this week. It's time for a short break. We'll be back with more stories. Stay tuned. And now for the weather updates, we have Naila with us.
Thank you. Now let's begin with Abu Dhabi, where it is around 43 degrees Celsius and it will be bright and sunny, so keep yourselves protected from the heat. And Amsterdam, the weather sounds idle compared to Abu Dhabi, where it is a solid 22 degrees Celsius with pleasant rainfall. While in Ankara, the weather will rise to 30 degrees Celsius with some partial sun. Now down under in Auckland, the weather is around 13 degrees Celsius with some sun, so it will be lovely and enjoyable. Although if you are traveling to Bangkok, you will most definitely need an umbrella because there are thunderstorms in the forecast, with temperatures rising to 32 degrees Celsius. Now moving towards Beijing, there will be some partial sun with temperatures at 33 degrees Celsius. Now heading towards Lebanon, Beirut will have some sunny weather at 29 degrees Celsius. while Berliners will have to deal with some heavy thunderstorms. Cairo will be experiencing some sun with temperatures at 37 degrees Celsius. Now down under in Canberra, the winter weather is keeping temperatures at bay at 11 degrees Celsius with some clouds. Now if you are traveling to Islamabad, lather up on sunscreen because it is bright, it is sunny and extremely hot. So fair warning, guys. Now moving on to Jakarta, there will be hot weather, but there will be some clouds. So make sure the sun's harsh rays stay at bay. Over to you.
Ella, thank you for the weather updates. And that brings us to the end of the news bulletin. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus News.